Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RPG Radio. We are playing Diablo 4 again today just before the server slam coming up, and I've got a new build that I was playing in early access. This is the Hook and Hammer build, which is super fun. Maybe not my favorite way to play the barbarian, but definitely a really fun reprieve from the optimal build I was using. This build is going to focus a lot on the chains to pull enemies in. We're going to be using Hammer of the Ancients to do an absolutely disgusting amount of damage with some of our gear. Bash is going to make that hit even harder. We've got Furious Charge for some mobility, crowd control, and then Wrath of the Berserker to make things even more gross when we get Super Saiyan Barbarian all over the place. It's going to be great. In this video, I'll give you the skill tree with all the points and where they go. I will give you all the aspects on the legendary gear in our kit, and apart from that, since it's only a level 25 cap in these early access playthroughs, that's going to be about it. It should stand the test of time, I'm thinking, as the game progresses once the full game's released, but at least as far as it goes right now, it's pretty decent at killing enemies, and I can imagine getting some big damage on elites isn't going to be too difficult either. So we'll start with the most important thing, the stuff that's baked right into your character, the skills. We're going to be picking up Bash for our basic skill. This is going to be our two-handed melee skill. So basically, we are dual wielding. You're going to equip this skill to your dual wielding weapons. Bash is basically going to ramp up to a stun. Bash takes 4 swings, and on the 5th swing, it is going to stun a character or an enemy for a duration of 1.25 seconds, I think. If you have this equipped to a two-handed weapon, which we don't in this build, it'll stun for 2 seconds. But we've got it equipped to our dual wielding melee, so we can attack a little bit faster and get those attacks out for Bash quicker, meaning we get the stun more often. And the stun is going to play into the rest of the build too, so that is important to remember. Moving down the skill tree, the next one up is going to be Hammer of the Ancients. As far as getting to Hammer of the Ancients, you do have to take another point in Bash or take Enhanced Bash. In this build, I took Enhanced Bash because of the increased Fortify. There's going to be a lot of fortification in this build just because it's a barbarian and some of the gear I think is helping out with that, but ultimately having that shield I think is pretty important when you're going to try to be a bruisery, frontliney type of character. That being said, 1 point in Bash, 1 point in Enhanced Bash gets you down to Hammer of the Ancients, and this is the first skill that you are just going to cap out. Put all 5 points into Hammer of the Ancients, Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients, and then Violent Hammer of the Ancients. All of that's going to be pretty important, and once we get to the gear, you'll see a bit more about why, but Hammer of the Ancients is the easiest thing to explain in the world. It is just a big magic hammer that we call down from our ancestors and squish a whole bunch of tiny, newly pancaked enemies into a breakfast-sized puddle of goop. Now, the modifiers for Hammer of the Ancient are pretty important too because they just rocket the damage up through the roof. Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients is more utility, but you need it to get to Violent Hammer of the Ancients. Enhanced is basically just going to let you get more fury with your other abilities when you're hitting big groups of enemies with your hammer. And Violent Hammer is actually going to let you deal considerable amount more damage with everything after you hit an overpower with your Hammer of the Ancients. Now, overpower itself is on a pretty low occurrence. It's only, I think, 3%, and you can't change that with any sort of anything at the moment. There is different skills in each class that will increase or guarantee the opportunity to hit an overpower. Specifically in the Barbarian kit, you can use Bash to do that with one of its upgrades, but you have to be using a two-handed weapon on bash in order to make that happen. So combat bash is kind of like, it's whatever, mainly because I want to be using my two-handed dual-wielding weapons for bash. I don't want to be using a slow two-handed weapon in order to get that done. So it's kind of, it's its own thing. But we deal, overpower happens often enough, but what overpower does is it's going to take your character's current life as well as fortified life, which is important with our gear and basically barbarians and frontlining in general. But since we've got fortified life and our own big boy health bar, that means that when we get the overpower, all of that is going to be added to the damage that we do with the overpowered ability, which is typically going to be Hammer of the Ancients, because that is the big damage dealer in this kit. Hence the reason we are maxing it out, getting all of the modifiers, and kind of centering, at least partly, this build around that button. The next skill in the tree is pretty easy, and that is Iron Skin. You've got 1 point in this and 1 point in both of the modifiers, and they are going to flow back into the build itself. But number one, Iron Skin is going to give you a barrier that absorbs 50% of your missing life. So, hopefully I don't need to explain, but the lower life you are, the bigger shield you are going to get, and playing as a barbarian, just playing as a frontliner in general, your health might get low. So, efficiency-wise, you want to push the Iron Skin button when you need it, when you are actually taking damage, but more importantly, the modifiers, well, I guess not importantly on the first modifier, Enhanced Iron Skin is going to increase the shield that you get for Iron Skin. So it's not, it's 5% of your maximum life, so it's still going to make the shield better, but after that is the important one, which is the Strategic Iron Skin. This is going to give you 9% of your base life as fortification, and then it's going to double that amount if you cast Iron Skin below 50% of your health. That is important because if you'll remember, that overpower damage that we do takes into account our fortified life as well as our maximum life. So when we have more fortification, we do more damage with our Hammer of the Ancients, and things get pretty gross as long as we're keeping an eye on that health bar. Apart from Iron Skin, though, traveling down the tree to charge, previously Furious Charge in Diablo 3, take 2 points into this just so we can get further down the tree and both of the modifiers, but Charge is going to make you unstoppable, push you forward, and then you are going to knock enemies back with the swing of your weapon at the end of your charge. Anything that gets knocked back is going to be stunned for 3 seconds after we take Enhanced Charge, which is the first mastery. You're going to knock them back into terrain and stun them for 3 seconds, which is pretty gross, all things considered, because CC is going to play a big part in this build. After that, Mighty Charge means that when your no, sorry, not Mighty Charge, it's Power Charge. Power Charge is going to reduce the cooldown of charge by 3 seconds if you knock enemies back into terrain. Mighty Charge makes them vulnerable, but we've got a hook to make them vulnerable, so Mighty Charge really is kind of redundant. But Power Charge, reducing the cooldown, letting us use charge more often, gives us more mobility, which is more important for the build than making things vulnerable again or for a longer period of time. After that, we've got the second most important part of this build, which is Steel Grasp. This is the hook of the hook and hammer. We're going to take all 5 points into Steel Grasp, which is going to decrease the cooldown to 8.8 seconds. You also have a 25% chance lucky hit on this bad boy. That's pretty decent. But it's going to throw out chains in a cone. I guess technically it throws out 3 chains because the game is much more precise on its hitboxes these days. But anyway, you'll throw those out. It doesn't deal a lot of damage. It's more for the crowd control of pulling enemies towards you, And then enhanced steel grasp is going to make them vulnerable for 2.5 seconds when they get pulled in. And then after that, we're going to take 1 additional charge in steel grasp, so we can use 3 instead of just 2. That said, the hook is important because we want to pull as many clumped up enemies towards us as possible, and we want them to take as much damage as possible from the Hammer of the Ancients, because hammer is where all our DPS is at. So the hook lines everybody up, and the hammer ends it all. The other cool part about charge is that if you are out of hooks, charge can also kind of set you up CC wise, grouping up enemies. Just like hook can, it just forces you to go face first into enemies instead of bringing them towards you, which may or may not be a good thing, because you might, you know, light up another pack. You might go somewhere you didn't want to go, that sort of thing. But hook is really simple. All you have to do is point and click. It's going to make you ranged as I just get stomped, frozen, and chewed out by goats. But you can tell the hook is fantastic. It's just going to increase the damage that you do through the factor of vulnerability, and your hammer is going to clean everything up like the hammer should be doing as your core skill. And then we finally made it down to our ultimate ability. There was only 1 point in Wrath of the Berserker because all of the other skills in the tree led us up to this point. But Wrath of the Berserker is going to give you a Berserking and Unstoppable for 5 seconds. And then for the next 10 seconds, dealing direct damage with basic skills grants Berserking for 5 seconds. So Berserking in and of itself is cool. The Unstoppable is also very good. And the lucky hit for Wrath of the Berserker is 40%. Lucky hit is basically the chance to activate special parts of your abilities. It's not crit. It's not a crit chance. It's a chance for an ability to do something special. If I am not explaining that good, let me know in the comments, but hopefully that makes sense. It's just a chance that your abilities have to do another special effect that they may get through, you know, gear, or just have in and of themselves. And I guess if you're not aware of what Berserking does, when you have Berserking, you're going to get 25% increased damage as well as 15% increased movement speed. So that's just Berserking in a nutshell. It's exactly what you would think it would be, and Berserking is one of those barbarian opportunities that it happens all the time. So there's a lot of skills in the barbarian tree that will go for the berserking aspect of things. There's lots of gear that has berserking on it, but maybe I'm over explaining it. You whack fast and you run faster because you're in berserk mode, and that's just nuts. But since we're all done with the skills and the modifiers and all that stuff, the base handling of the kit, let's talk about the gear. Now, when I say gear, I'm not talking specifically about the exact item that we're going to be using. I'm talking more about the aspects of the legendary stuff that we picked up along the way, either crafting, found randomly, got it from a dungeon, whatever the case may be. These are the aspects that were working the best for me, and they have either been applied through the occultist or, you know, one of the other things that I mentioned. But all of that being said, they all do mesh pretty well with the way that our abilities are set up, and they do keep things nice and frosty for us. So the helmet, starting from the top going all the way down, helmet is the aspect of the Iron Warrior. That means Iron Skin is also going to give us Unstoppable and damage reduction. It can be from 10 to 20%, it looks like, but Iron Skin giving you Unstoppable and damage reduction on top of that shield and all the fortification that you can get is pretty good for a tanky ability that does much more when you are low health. If you're low health, you're not going to want to get crammed into a corner by a big mob, so you hit that button, go Unstoppable, and just get right out of there. Actually, now that I think about it, Unstoppable and Unhindered probably aren't the same thing, are they? unstoppable would just mean that you can't be crowd controlled, so you can continue doing damage. But I'm confusing it with passing through enemies. So yeah, we're learning in the middle of the video, guys. Welcome to the party. But unstoppable on Iron Skin still good, because if you're low health, you don't want to be crowd controlled. So there's not bad stuff happening there. Aspect of the deflecting barrier is our chest armor, and that's while you have a barrier active, there's a 20 to 30% chance to ignore incoming direct damage from distant enemies. Because we have Iron Skin, the chest piece is again buffing that, but a 20-30% chance to ignore projectiles with a shield up is pretty good. I'd think that that's pretty tasty if the ranged guys are giving you any trouble, which they typically are if you're a melee dude. So, if you can't pull them in with the chain to kill them immediately, the aspect of the deflecting barrier is very helpful for reducing the damage that they can do from far away. Next is our gloves, which is the aspect of shared misery. When you hit a crowd-controlled enemy, there is a 30 to 50% chance that crowd-controlled effect will spread to another unaffected enemy. And that comes in the form of a lucky hit. So when that happens, we're going to spread out the stunning that we do, and that is going to happen with both charge and bash. And it just generally going to be really useful. Yeah. Tell me any game where stunning is not worth it. Apart from, bosses and stuff, people who can't be stunned, which is a little bit goofy, but, it's fine. That's the way that the games are balanced. I'll be less salty about it later. As far as pants go, our aspect of tempering blows. After swapping 6 times, we're going to gain a flat amount of fortify. Swapping weapons with the barbarian is exactly what you think it is. It's just using all of your abilities, and that is going to swap up the weapons that you are wielding in order to do that. So if you're using dual wielding weapons on bash, you're using your slashing weapon on charge, you're using your bludgeoning weapon on Hammer of the Ancients, and you see where I'm going. So you're using all of those different weapons to do different things within the gameplay of your build, and while you're swapping, you are going to get fortified life from the aspect of tempering blows. And remember me ranting about it just a little while ago, more fortification means more damage through overpower, which is what we want. Ghostwalker aspect is your boots. That's what it is. There we go. So while unstoppable, and for 2 seconds after that, you gain increased movement speed and you can move freely through enemies. I knew it worked that way. I just thought it was all in one aspect. So I'm dumb, but still, Ghostwalker aspect, being able to let you pass through enemies when you hit your Iron Skin or when you charge, is really effective for not getting clumped up on by swarming enemies. So I definitely knew it was there for a reason. My brain was telling me that we had it. I just couldn't remember how exactly we did. As far as your jewelry goes, we've got protecting aspects on our amulet, mainly because the bubble that you get from Vigo in in the campaign is incredibly effective. Just, stopping all kinds of damage. Why not take it? The first ring that we've got is Earth Striker's aspect. After swapping weapons 10 times, your next attack will overpower and deal 30 to 50% increased overpower damage. Overpower already deals a goofy amount of damage, so with this working in tandem with that, we get a pretty disgusting level of hammer damage. It's nice. It's very nice. So you get, you can see here that 3% overpower isn't as important as stacking up your weapon swapping and then making sure you got those 10 stacks and hitting the hammer button. So when you have overpower ready, your hammer is going to absolutely annihilate people. But yeah, Earth Strikers is very, very important for the build, so make sure you can find that. That's what's giving your hammer all of the extra oomph that it needs to just absolutely wreck people. Aspect of the Umbral is next. This is more of this is probably one of those rings that I just used because it was laying around, but Umbral is going to give you 1 to 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. And since we're using Bash, I mean, we whack them a lot, we stun them a lot. We also stun a good chunk with our charge, which is pretty cool. But we're getting primary resource, which is Fury back through that. So it's not bad. It's not the greatest thing in the universe, but I definitely say that it's got its use in the build. As far as weapons go, let's get our dual wieldies out of the way first. Number 1 small hander is going to be aspect of Ancestral Force. This is pretty simple in terms of what it's doing for Hammer of the Ancients. It's just giving it a shockwave that goes outward, and that is going to do anywhere from 32 to 50% more damage to the enemies that it hits. Or no, sorry, the shockwave itself is going to deal 32 to 50% damage. Unlike the very center of, or the hitbox of Hammer of the Ancients, which is doing all of the damage. So if you hit them with a shockwave, you're obviously dealing less, but at least you're not missing them. If that makes sense, it should. You're basically increasing the hitbox for Hammer of the Ancients so that you can do a little bit more damage than nothing on the outer leg of it. I'm explaining it too hard. You get it. That's how it works. Rapid Aspect is the other single-handed weapon, and that means basic skills are going to get 23 to 33% attack speed. If you remember from early on, since we've got Bash on our two-handed weapons, swinging faster is important for getting those stuns off, because those stuns can travel to other people, and we get primary resource back, remember, for stun people? So it's good. It's good. Attack speed is important for those single-handed weapons. After that, our slashing weapon is going to be the Devilish Aspect. This is a barbarian specific, pretty sure it's barbarian specific. Yeah, it is barbarian specific aspect, and it fires off a Dust Devil in a straight line from where you cast a core ability. So while I don't think this is especially perfect for the build, what it's doing is letting Hammer of the Ancients do more damage in a straight, or in a line further than it goes. So all that said, Hammer of the Ancients deals more damage in a shockwave around it, and it is also going to deal more damage in a straight line in front of it. The Dust Devil is going to deal flat damage to whatever gets hit in front of our Hammer of the Ancients. Probably over-explaining it again, but you see where I'm going. And then finally, our bludgeoning weapon is Accelerating Aspect. This goes, well, this is what I found for our mace, but critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 20 to 40% for 3 seconds. So crits with our hammer, which is the only core skill that we've got, are going to make it easier for us to swing the bash more often, which is going to give us more resource, and we're going to potentially stun more people. You see how it all feeds back into it. It's pretty cyclical. It's all synergistic, as the kids are saying. I don't even know. That seems more like a corporate term to me. But you see where we are going. Now, all that being said, Wrath of the Berserker, giving you that berserking with the attack speed 2, as well as the increasing damage from berserking and the unstoppable. All of that gets just immensely more gross when you hit your ultimate button. Even though Wrath of the Berserker is on a 60-second cooldown, it's still good. The build itself is very capable, but when you hit Wrath of the Berserker and you're hammering people, you really shouldn't end up having much trouble at all. So That being said, it is only a level 25 build. I really want to see how it works towards the later stages of the game. But we're still we're about a month away from release still, and as much as I'd like to just make tons and tons of builds in D4, it is definitely something that the devs are like, hey, once you get to late game, you're going to have to stick with what you got. So I really need to figure it out early on, and probably won't be deviating a whole lot as I at least get through that first week. So anyway, as far as the hook and hammer goes, your gameplay should be pretty easy to see in the video, but it's mostly going to be pull bad guys in with hook from a distance. Make sure that we have got that that hammer of the ancients charged up to maximum damage, as long as we're hitting the important targets. If you are just going for a mob of squishy little guys like ghouls, feel free to just rip it and then smash them with a flat hammer of the ancients. It's not gonna do any less to them than it would to a big scary elite monster. But we've reached the end. That's all there is to talk about with this build. I probably over-explained quite a bit of it. It is pretty straightforward. I mean, mainly playing barbarian feels, at least for me, very fluid, very easy. I doubt I will ever make a sorcerer or sorceress, as whatever. Barbarian's always been super cool. Druid also looks extremely cool. I hope that... I hope once the game actually releases that the werebear builds are going to be more cool, because I did have a couple kind of working builds for the druid in the early play, but they just didn't feel as good as the barbarian did at the same level. So especially since I was trying to play full werebear, it's kind of like, this doesn't have the same impact as the barbarian does, and this is how I want to play. So I really think it's kind of more hampered by the gear that I found. And if we're being honest, the druid kit doesn't exactly lend itself to werebear form as much as it does werewolf. Werewolf seems to get a lot of you know, much more damaging, much more mobile kind of stuff, whereas werebear it's just kind of more tanky. It's more, I don't know, survivable, but it doesn't feel like you do as much damage, at least until you get the pulverize item, and you end up moving more towards this type of barbarian where you're really stacking up charges. You want to make sure that next pulverize hits for a disgusting amount of damage, and you're just paying attention to that. That aspect was fun, but it took me so long to find the item to do that with the druid that it really diminished the fun value of the build, because I had to spend so much time waiting for that item to just make it. But yeah, as far as barbarians go, this build, along with the bleeding build, along with the kind of kick, leap, death blow build, were my absolute favorite time spent with Diablo 4 in the early access. So if you are not playing a barbarian, or if you haven't yet, I would highly recommend it. I will be... I don't know if I want to search for more barbarian builds in the server slam, or if I want to try out the necromancer. I think I need to do that. I have some rogue stuff as well, but I think rogue builds are played out to death on YouTube because of some of the cheesy damage that they could do. So that's a little bit goofy. But hey, you know, we do what we can. As far as this video goes, I will see you guys next time. I hope you're all enjoying Diablo 4. Peace out.